Hello, this is Seth Wenning, and welcome to another AFI 100 Greatest American Film List review. Today's film is Snow White. So I never did a cartoon before this one. So I'm pretty sure that this is the only cartoon on the list, and it's an important one. Snow White occupies the 49th position on the 1998 list and the 34th position on the 2007 list. So it went up 15 spaces. Came out in 1937 to 38. The reason why it's important, it was the first full-length color animation. Think about that. We're talking before the Wizard of Oz. We're talking when there were like 3 color films. Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, Snow White. Snow White really doesn't stand on her own because she doesn't have any real personality. What makes this film watchable and just adored by all audiences are the dwarves. The dwarves are lovable, easily identifiable characters, and, they're kind of like kids. They're looking for Mother Snow White. I'm going to talk to you about why Snow White doesn't really carry over now to 2017. Snow White doesn't have a personality. She wasn't written a personality. She was a character who gets acted upon. Like if you're not friends with the most popular cheerleader in school and you just observe her and you observe the jock going up and talking to her, you want to date, and you observe the unpopular girls or other people picking on her, oh, she's so dumb, she's blonde or something, and you don't really have enough information about who the real person is to formulate an opinion, so you just formulate a stereotypical opinion. Oh, she must have money because her hair is voluminous, whatever, You don't know the truth. It's like high school, so Snow White always gets acted upon. And the problem with Snow White is that she never was given personality, and she was always acted upon by other people. In Snow White, she's the only stepdaughter of the evil queen. The evil queen is very vain, and she has a magic mirror in which she asks, who is the fairest of them all? Who is the fairest of them all? And always the mirror answers, you, answer you, the queen, are the fairest in the kingdom. One day, the mirror answered, Snow White is the fairest. And this just drives the queen crazy. Because like Cinderella, she has Snow White cleaning floors and doing all these subservient jobs like cleaning the floors. It keeps on happening, and the queen wants to retain her title, so she asks the huntsman to take Snow White into the woods to kill her and bring back her heart in a box. The huntsman takes her in the woods, and he can't bring himself to kill her, and he begs for forgiveness. Snow White tells him to run away, and she goes further into the forest. Huntsman goes back to the queen with a pig's heart in a box, because the pig's heart is similar to a human heart. And Snow White is lost in the forest, stumbles upon this cottage, goes inside, does a Goldilocks peeks around and finds that there are 7 beds and 7 seats at the table, 7 bowls. And then she is discovered by the dwarves who adopt her as their mother. She starts cleaning and, making the place beautiful and making friends with the forest creatures. And this was a cinematography marvel because the cartoons used to be more like Bugs Bunny, where the background would move in the background. It would never change. Like every character was running, there would just be background going past. But Walt Disney wanted Snow White, every film frame to be filled with movement. So Snow White would be dancing or doing something with the forest friends, and while she's talking, little birds would be going around and giving her, gardens of flowers, and bunnies would be hopping. So there was a lot of movement, which just overjoyed audiences because they'd never seen that before in animation. Walt Disney, or the Walt Disney Company, invented multi-plane cameras where you would have the drawing of Snow White and in back of the drawing the Thumper, and without Thumper, that's from Bambi, but just characters in background, and then you would stack it in the zones up so they could film every action at once. And it was really effective. And up until, the switch to digital film, digital Pixar, Toy Story, they were still using a version of this system to create like the Lion King and Beauty and the Beast. So this was a long-lasting technology in the cartoon industry. When I say that Snow White's being acted upon, she seems demure. She doesn't really say much. Like, well, if we go back to Steamboat, when they introduces you to Mickey Mouse, and he's out there piloting the steamboat, whistling, he's the main focus of attention. And likewise with any Donald Duck cartoon, he would just freak out and start quacking. Or Goofy would be doing goofy things. And Snow White was just like a statue, like icon, and you would just put it there and everyone would go, ooh, Snow White. She gets acted upon by the wicked queen, who says, kill my stepdaughter, and she is acted upon by the huntsman saying, I can't kill you. And she's acted upon by the dwarves who say, I know she could be a mom. We've never had a mom or a housekeeper or a caretaker before. Cinderella was a better female character, but Snow White was the first. Disney also introduced a sidekick character, like the Seven Dwarves were sidekick because of Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. But the Seven Dwarves, like I said before, make the film because they embody their names. Like Happy is happy, Doc is Doc, Bashful is always bashful. And it was the first time that people, especially kids, have seen this attribute in the name and just the body language associated with that attribute. Grumpy is always grumpy, and it just continued in movies after that. It's a lot of innovation. I think it stands up. really, I think really stands up today, even though it was 1937, 2013, it's 80 years old, because it's a watchable film when Snow White is being chased through the forest of trees and clawing at her, and no one had seen that in the cartoon before then, and so it's still a good story. Still a fight between good and evil, but I think especially girls today might catch on that Snow White doesn't really have a personality. So maybe this would be a good discussion to have with your kids, given that it's so old, and we all know that girls are human too, that type of thing. And if you like this video, click like, subscribe, and visit my dialogue box. Below you'll see all my gear that I use to make this video. And have a good day.